Whenever the NBA draft comes around, naturally, everybody's focused on the draft. They're focused on the prospects. Where is each guy going to go? What is each team going to do? But this year in particular, for a lot of different reasons, a lot of the focus is actually on some really interesting trade rumors that are going around right now. Let's start off by talking about the Houston Rockets. It seemed that in many ways is at a crossroads. They've now moved on to Ime Udoka. They have their new head coach in. They have some talent on the roster, certainly. Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Şengün, Tari Eason. Like there's a lot of stuff to like in Houston, but we've never really seen it come together. Granted, it's only really been 2 years of this rebuild, but they need to start moving in some kind of a positive direction. And they expected to be picking in the top 3, potentially with the first overall pick in this draft. And through some bad lottery luck, they are now picking 4th overall, which is really not where you want to be in this class. And that gives them 2 options. One, they can look to trade up. I've seen a lot of trade up rumors with the Rockets trying to go up and get either Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson, or you can trade this pick elsewhere in exchange for a veteran to really jumpstart what you have there. Of course, there's some James Harden rumors in the offseason. If they are able to bring in James Harden as a free agent, that's going to accelerate things even further. And I think they'd be even more inclined to look at trading this pick for a veteran, but they're going to have to do the draft first and then worry about free agency later. And they've been connected to a lot of different guys. Someone that I think is going to constantly be rumored all the time is someone like OG Anunoby. Anytime there's a wing that can guard and can shoot and can give you a little bit of other stuff, that player is going to be valuable. We don't exactly know what the direction is for Toronto right now. I think OG is someone that's going to continue to be available for them. And ordinarily, I would expect a team that is in the situation Houston's in to slow play this a little bit, but this is not an ordinary situation. They might get James Harden. They just got Ime Udoka. I would expect them to try and make a pretty significant leap here, even if you could pretty easily argue that they're certainly not ready for that, and or that adding Harden in the first place is a bad idea. And obviously, regardless of who they're targeting, the goal is to upgrade in terms of talent. The goal is to try and elevate this team, push them in a positive direction to really get some good momentum going. Also, though, they don't have full control over their 2024 first round pick, which is a dangerous place to be if you're a Houston team that sometimes intentionally, sometimes not, has not been very good over the last couple of seasons. And if you are giving away, for example, the 5th or the 6th pick in the draft next year to Oklahoma City as a result of a trade that happened years ago where you swapped Russell Westbrook and Chris Paul, that's obviously a big concern. It is top 4 protected, so if they're truly really, really bad, they will keep their pick next year. They owe that pick top 24 protected to Oklahoma City, or excuse me, top 4 protected to Oklahoma City in 2024. But as we saw this year, the lottery luck is not necessarily something you want to be counting on in terms of how you're going to continue to build your roster. And the Rockets trading away number 4 overall or trading up into the top 3 is something you're going to continue to see rumors about. Speaking of teams that got bad lottery luck, the Detroit Pistons at number 5 fell as far as they could have. And unfortunately for them, that puts them in a similar situation to where Houston is. However, there's a little bit more optimism there, maybe with Detroit, because yes, they were really bad last year, but Cade barely played. They would have been better had Cade played more games. They've got some talent there with Jaden Ivey and Cade and a lot of other pieces, guys that we're not really sure exactly how they fit together specifically in the front court. They've got a lot of highly drafted players in the front court, not a ton in terms of guys you're excited about on the wing. There's going to be some weirdness there with Detroit. And again, I would look at them as a team similar to Houston, where if they don't love their options with the 5th overall pick, they could be looking again to trade that 5th overall pick in exchange for someone like OG Anunoby. Things like that's going to continue to come up. Guys that are going to help them win and elevate this roster. We're starting to see teams move away from this constant tanking stage and really try and be competitive, especially as we've seen the success of some of the teams that were in the play-in tournament this year in the postseason. Earning a play-in spot, I think, is going to be a true goal of both Houston and Detroit this year, and that could be as a result of trading away the 5th overall pick. Not necessarily for a huge star player. They feel like they have their pairing of the future there with Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham. More so about a complementary option. Again, we're thinking about OG. We're talking about some of those wings around the league. Maybe you can move 1 or 2 of those other front court pieces around as well to really try and solidify this roster into one that truly makes sense. Next up now is a really, really fun one. The Orlando Magic have the 6th and the 11th picks in this class. And I really don't see the benefit for them of adding 2 more lottery picks to a roster that's already so young, that already has a ton of talent, and already has a lot of similarly talented players that you're going to find at both 6 as well as 11. It's clear who the foundation of this team is, right? It's Franz Wagner, it's Paolo, maybe some Wendell Carter in there, maybe some Markelle Fultz in there. They've got some pieces that you really, really like moving forward. And I think that you could talk yourselves into this idea that when they were healthy last year, they were a play-in team. because they were. Like when they had all their guys, the beginning of the year was really rough for them because of all the injury issues. Now they're getting a lot of those guys back. They started to get some of those guys back towards the end of the season, and packaging together picks 6 and 11, specifically in an offseason in which some teams might be looking to cut some money because of salary cap issues, the new CBA coming up, making it more and more difficult to carry a ton of salary. Not a lot of teams around the league having a ton of salary cap space to be able to dump that stuff into. Orlando having these 2 picks could allow them to go out and get, again, not necessarily a star level player, because I don't think 6 and 11 in this particular draft are super valuable. I do think they can go out and get someone that really helps them around Paolo, around Franz, and again, continues to elevate their roster. Maybe they don't trade both. Maybe it's just 11. Maybe they put 11 and 6 together and go into the top 3. The options for Orlando are pretty limitless, and something that's really exciting for a roster that I personally really like. I also want to talk, of course, about the San Antonio Spurs, the story of the draft. They're going to get Victor Wembanyama first overall, but we're also getting rumors about them trading away Devin Vassell or some other pieces on their roster, trying to get an extra first-round pick in this draft, reportedly to add a point guard to the roster. And the reason that's weird to me is because San Antonio has a ton of cap space, and if they really want to, quote-unquote, solve the point guard issue, they could just go out and do that in free agency. There are veterans that you can bring in if that's truly what you want, alongside Wembanyama, alongside some of the other pieces you have on the roster, which I think does make sense. If that's truly what you want to do, then just do it in free agency. What are we doing trading away future pieces in exchange for a first round pick at the end of this draft? Just keep Devin Vassell, just keep all these pieces and go out and solve your point guard issues in free agency. And that to me is a really interesting team this offseason, because you have one of 2 options. Like, do they want to slow play it with Wembanyama, make sure that he gets fully acclimated to the NBA game with the understanding that there's no real concern that he's going to ask out and want to try and leave? You have a ton of team control over this guy for the next couple of seasons and continue to just build gradually over time. That's an option that they have. They have enough talent there where they're at least going to look halfway competent. Or are they going to try and accelerate this because they think that Wembanyama is going to be unbelievable immediately? If he's that good straight away, and you add him to the fact they have Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, whoever else they add in free agency, then maybe going out and having a big free agency spending spree makes sense, specifically when you consider the timeline of Greg Popovich there as head coach as well. All of these are big considerations. I would caution against going out and getting a ton of free agents this offseason, because that could limit what you can do in terms of, the entirety of the Victor Wembanyama era, quote unquote. You don't want to be in a situation where you don't have assets, you don't have free agents, cap space, and suddenly you're kind of in the middle, not that great, don't have a ton of upward trajectory. You kind of want to wait and see. That's what I personally would do. As it relates specifically to this draft, I certainly would not recommend trading away guys for a late first round pick in this draft, even if you do want to, kind of reset things on the rookie scale and things like that and save some money. I guess that makes sense, but overall, I wouldn't do it. But point being, like, this is just a few of a lot of different rumors I could have talked about leading up to this draft. I think it's going to be a theme of this draft with the new CBA, with the way that the rules are changing, with the way some of these teams are going to be looking to dump some salary, dump some contracts, and the way that a couple of these teams have been at the bottom of the league for years and are going to be looking to make a leap up. I think this draft in particular lends itself really well to, whether it be on draft night or just prior to, a ton of movement and a ton of trades, whether it be within the draft up and down or for some other players around the league. And I can't wait to see what happens.